Mr. President. When I walked in, you asked me if I trust the people back home with their vote, and absolutely I do. Matter of fact, I stood up here earlier trying to defend their vote and their opportunity to vote. Also, on a constitutional amendment, I think it's fine, and I've always been supportive of allowing amendment to go forward to the people and let the people vote. Matter of fact, there are times in which I have voted for amendments that's been through this body that I myself had voted against as a citizen, but I voted it because I want to let the people vote. No question. I believe in the sovereignty of the people and ultimately the people's decision. I want to just say a little bit. We talked about the Constitution. The Senator from Oregon talked about this idea of the Constitution. And I just want us to remember what the Constitutions are about. Constitutions are not about giving people rights. See, those are inalienable, given by our Creator. We already have those rights. Constitutions are made, Mr. President, to protect those rights. To protect those rights. Constitutions ensure that the government represents and is responsive to ordinary citizens. It protects the people and holds the government accountable. It actually, it was brought up here that our Constitution limits us. That our particular Constitution right here limits us. That's true. It limits this body. It limits government. But the Constitution protects the people. Senator from Oregon talks about the idea to preclude the legislature, why the Constitution, our Constitution, the idea of it precluding the legislature from this issue is insane and ridiculous. Well, let's look at how constitutions were formed. So in America, we had an issue of taxation without representation when we were a colony. And so when we created a constitution, we didn't want to have a government to come in to tax us unduly without our representation. They want to make sure they're sure of this. And when we broke away from Virginia, if you want to look at the history of this, of how this ended up in our Constitution, it's because Virginia, the Assembly, was actually taxing this area much differently than the rest of Virginia, the western part of Virginia. And so when we, as a state, formulated this Constitution, we wanted to make sure an elected body would not do this unduly. You know, the senator from Jefferson, I want to say, mentioned a lot of interesting things because I think it goes to the point where the senior senator from the 16th was talking about deception. Because, you know, because it was said here. Senator from Jefferson just stood up, asked for the finance chair to yield, and finance chair yielded. And the question was, is this amendment, does it require us to lower taxes? Yes or no? And the answer of the finance chairman says no. Does it require us to raise taxes? The answer was no. Now that just happened here on the floor, right? But see, here's where the deception enters in, Mr. President. See, this amendment, it's true. It does not require that taxes will be lower. Matter of fact, it says may. But there's a promise. There's a promise out there that the people think they're getting, and it's not the case. It's a promise that the taxes will be lower. But it's proven that this amendment doesn't lower any taxes. It's a promise. Now, I'm wondering, you know, in the sense of we have a Constitution protecting us, and there's a promise that we'll be able to lower your taxes, and I'm wondering why in the world the people don't trust. Well, maybe it's because of the track record of this body. See, we promised teachers promised the teachers pay raises, but then, of course, we held that up until we had them give so many other things to get it. We promised to eliminate tax on Social Security. Well, we didn't make it all the way. We have been promising our people tax relief for a long time, but it seems like everybody else jumps in front of the line and they never get it. we're sorry, the everyday person. Now, I want us to look at the amendment that's going before the people. So the Senator from Morgan read part of it, but I want to say what's going to be actually on the ballot. This is what people are going to read, okay? So, and Mr. President, maybe no one's listening to me in this chamber, but I know the people back home are, so I'm just talking with them, okay? So here's what it is. Amendment number 1. Amendment authorizing the legislature to eliminate or lower the ad valorem tax on motor vehicles and other tangible personal property, okay? So if this isn't going to eliminate or lower, because it said that this does not do it, it says that in the title, to eliminate or lower. We already heard on the floor it said, no, it's not going to eliminate. Maybe it's not going to maybe lower, but that's what it says, okay? And then it says the purpose of this amendment is to permit the legislature to eliminate or lower the ad valorem personal property tax on different species of tangible personal property, such as motor vehicles. Then it goes on, folks. Now read the rest of it. To permit the legislature to establish different statewide rates of taxation, assessment, or methods of valuation for different species of tangible personal property, and to permit the legislature to classify property as real property or personal property for ad valorem taxes. My goodness sakes, you need a team of Charleston lawyers just to figure that out. Now, if we were being honest, Mr. President, if we weren't being deceptive, then why doesn't it just say no car tax? Very simple. You know, it could be amendment number 1, no car tax. Yes or no? That'd be very simple if it weren't being deceptive. Okay? But no, it talks about this. And then the senator from Jefferson talks about the thing about tax base that treats everyone equal. Treat everyone the same, equally. Right? Yeah, that's a good value. But what does this say? This is on the amendment now, folks. Legislature to establish different statewide rates of taxation, assessments of different species of tangible property. I don't see anything about equality in that. I see different. So what does that mean? Does it mean one area can get taxed more than the other? You know, Mr. President, this amendment is flawed. Now, I would be all for supporting going to an amendment to the people that was very simple and straightforward and wasn't deceptive. If it said no car tax, I'd vote for it, right? Let the people decide. But this, my goodness sakes, this is not doing anything except deceiving them, thinking that they're going to get a tax break. We heard on the floor here that that's not necessarily the case. Also deceiving them that they're going to be treated equally. Well, we heard that. That's not in the amendment here, as far as what they're going to be voting on. And it's all under a promise of they're going to get a tax break. Deception. You know, Mr. President, let me tell you something. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, talking about constitutionality, he says, you know, as a person is said to have a right to his or her property, he or she may be equally said to have a property in his or her rights. He also says, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradually and silently encroachments by those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. By gradual and silent encroachments of those in power, right here in this body, encroaching on people's rights in the Constitution. And what is protecting people's rights, we are trying to put an amendment on there to deceive them, to take away those rights, to open them up to this body, to potentially raise taxes as much as eliminate taxes, to sit there and have different tax rates. And that's exactly what the original founders of the drafters of this Constitution tried to prevent from happening, is people in power taking away those individual rights. And now we're trying to do a flashy temptation saying, give up your rights, give up your rights, give up your rights. So that what can we do later? Giving empty promises that don't go through? You know what? James Madison also said, Mr. President, all men having power ought to be mistrusted. I'm going to tell you why I'm voting against it. I have a real trust issue with this body. I don't trust it. I don't trust the Senate. I don't trust the legislative process to it, especially taking the power away from the people of West Virginia. I don't trust this body here because I know so many times I've seen it down here when people are being violated and ignored and pushed by the side, and the only thing they have to protect them is this Constitution, and now we are trying to lead them into temptation. Well, you know what the Lord's prayer says? Lord, do not lead me into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And I'm going to tell you right now, Mr. President, this amendment right here is a deception. It's evil. It's deceiving the people of West Virginia. And by goodness, what the senator, the 16th senator, the senior senator from the 16th said yesterday about draining the swamp. Absolutely. This swamp down here needs to be drained. And I guarantee when it is drained, Mr. President, there's a lot of crocodiles that people will find. Thank you.